Hi folks, you're with Tacitus today at your Pushback channel, and thank you for joining this live stream. In this chat, I'd like to talk about the process involved and the corruption associated with the selling off of public assets. Let's say a government, it could be a state government or a regional government or a federal government, wants to sell off assets like the electricity network or the water system or some other public asset. Now, this is something that has happened quite a lot. I mean, you get other things like toll roads, for example, but this is typically how it works, and typically how corrupt it is, and how it always involves increased cost for the citizens, for the consumer. Now, if they do get an extra service, then it's marginal, and they have to pay handsomely for it. This seems to be the new way, so governments can avoid having these big capital assets on their books and the cost of running them. So let's have a look at that. Here, now, I'll use one example here. This is, well, I'll use a few, but the first one here is the electricity, not only the network, but the generating capacity as well. So the government has sold this off at now it's a monopoly because it's a public asset. So what they're meant to do is employ local people and supply electricity, in this case, at an affordable price. There's meant to be no profiteering. It runs as a non-profit organisation, or that's its charter at least. Now, there's a lot of feather bedding goes in, and instead of making profits, they'll use it to hire extra people to reduce unemployment, people that aren't really needed. So it becomes rather inefficient because governments will lean on these organisations to overhire people. So they may need only 1,000 workers, but they'll hire 10,000, for example. So anyway, the government decides they want to get it off the books. Now, they want to get a good price on it, so they're going to sell it as a monopoly, which isn't the point, because the government's saying we're going to sell this electricity network, and it's going to bring more competition to the market because different players will be competing. That'll reduce the price. It'll increase the quality of the service. So that's the sales pitch to the public, because people don't really want public assets sold off. So the government then put this electricity network up for sale at a premium monopoly price, after having told the public there's going to be lots of competition and prices will come down. So they offer it for sale. Now, it goes already to one of the big merchant banks that makes a huge fee out of it. There'll be a down payment through the back door for the winning bidder, and that money will then go into another quango, which will be to review the electricity network once it's sold. So say $100 million will be creamed out of that. That'll then go to this separate quango, which will be just a job for political mates and hangers-on and buddies and mistresses and so on. So that $100 million will just disappear into the ether and will achieve nothing for the citizenry. Then it's sold, and the money to buy it has come from overseas. So they're going to use various management fee offsets to make sure no profit or anything is ever made in Australia, and so they'll never pay tax on it. They again get monopoly pricing power, and then the government, as part of the deal, says, okay, well, when we sell it to you, we'll put a special clause in the deal that says for 20 years, for example, 20 years, the electricity network is exempt from all competition. So they don't have to compete. So they're free to make maximum profits. Now, hardly surprising, when the electricity network sold, before sort of barely a day's gone by, the prices are going up. Now, the service, you could say the service has improved, but really there's just a lot more advertising telling you how wonderful it is. There's no actually improved service. There's a lot of money going in advertising, which happens to be a business that's owned by the people who've bought the electricity network. So it's all being kept in the family and just does a round robin through the family cluster of businesses. So the public's paying more than double what they were paying before. the service is no better. The local people on the telephone who would answer inquiries, that's all been outsourced to India or somewhere. So there's even fewer jobs. Most people are losing their jobs. So there's really no gain for the community. There's just a one-off benefit of selling an asset, and the government gets it off their books. But that's it. There's no real benefit to the community. Now, this happens pretty much time and time. If we look at, say, British Rail as an example, you couldn't say it was well run, but it's substantially more expensive than it once was. Probably better run, but substantially more expensive than it once was. And is it a better service? If it is better, is the improvement sufficient to cover the additional cost that fares are now to travel on British trains? So these are all things to consider when you look at sale of public assets. How does it improve the lives of the citizens? Do citizens get better service, better product, or better outcomes? Is it cheaper? Are they saving money? And you see this in things like toll roads. There are various toll roads built around big cities now, roads that otherwise the government would have built, but now they farm it out to the private sector, and tolls are paid. And again, there's this agreement that they won't have to compete. The roads in and around the area that commuters may decide to use are either blocked off or restricted, or there's a lot more traffic lights put in there. That people are effectively funneled into these toll roads to guarantee profits and outcomes to the investors. And this is part of a plan that we can see, and it goes back pretty much to the medieval days, where the Crown often, or the government of the day, would give monopolies to favoured flunkies and stooges and buddies and so on, and so you monopoly to collect all the tax on salt or whatever it might be, or production of something, and then they would give the government a piece of the action out of that, but they were allowed to profit hugely for this. Now, they had to pay the government for the right to have this monopoly, and then they had to extort as much as they could out of the citizenry. And we're seeing the same sort of thing happening now in the West, where all public assets, and there's been a lot of this in Britain, all public assets are being sold off to these big private investors, and it reduces the amount of benefit to the community and to the citizenry. People are paying more, and they're being forced, in effect, to subsidise the big end of town with paying these higher prices. And of course, these organisations aren't paying tax, or hardly any tax, and they're using all sorts of offshore round robin money bouncing and moving around schemes to avoid paying any local tax. So there's very, very little benefit to societies and to communities doing it. Now, whether or not the government could run these businesses more efficiently if they wanted to, well, they probably could, but governments cannot get away from appointing friends and relatives and flunkies and stooges to any job. Everything, governments see everything as patronage. There's nothing that isn't patronage, and that causes them to make usually very bad business decisions and commercial decisions when they do make them. And we can see this now with the manufacture of these vaccines and the distribution of various equipment relating to the vaccines. There seem to be an awful lot of well-connected people who do very nicely, thank you, out of this. So that's just an overview of how that all works. And you've been with Tacitus today, and thank you for listening.